touched upon it earlier. I don't know if you heard this amazing talk in the beginning of the session, yeah, I think one of the issues is, like you said, trust is a major component of that. I think that the problems that the blockchain, using a blockchain-based registry system could solve is the trust and transparency issue of, is this information accurate? Is it authentic? And do I thus need to rely on an absolute power to determine my right, as is the case with most registration-based systems, as opposed to being in control of that information publicly or myself, and allowing some court system, for example, if there's a dispute, to determine whether or not this information is admissible. So I don't know if that necessarily answers your question.
Do you think the blockchain, if the registered system that we currently have was sitting on the blockchain, that it would be the final word?
I don't necessarily. I think it's difficult to determine that because I would imagine there are issues within a registration system, and there's still disputes within registration systems. Even though the idea is that it's supposed to be an absolute, at least to my understanding, it's supposed to be, I'm not a lawyer, it's supposed to be absolute determination. Again, I just want to reiterate that as far as blockchain goes, it's more of a database. So it is a way of verifying and organizing and keeping real estate property information. So it's not a dispute resolution system, it's not an authentication system.
It's only as good as the data that goes into it.
That's right, that's exactly right.
But in some respects it is kind of a blending of registration and the recording system, because it kind of creates its registry out of a chain of title. The point is you can maintain a chain of title, which is what I take it the recorded system is. You're supposed to trace that chain.
Exactly.
So it kind of organically produces a registry. And the key difference is with a registration system run by a government, you have to trust that government. And that trust question, which is such a critical word in the Bitcoin blockchain world, is problematic. And if could society more trust something that is distributed where nobody can actually tamper with it? Maybe, maybe not. These are some of these questions. Yes, sir.
Two questions. One is how does blockchain deal with retrospective transactions? I mean, if the world began tomorrow, it would seem to be a perfect solution to the issue going forward, but you have hundreds of years of transactions. What do you do about that? Secondly, if there were enabling legislation either on state or federal level to facilitate the adoption of blockchain, is that possible? Is anybody thinking about that, and how would that work?
Yes.
So I'll take this one only because Michael asked us to exhibit conflict amongst the panel, and he wasn't going to be happy unless we broke into a fist fight. And I happen to be a contrarian on this issue for some of the same reasons. With respect to titling, I look forward to a world in which the titles are all on the blockchain. It would be very helpful for our company and what we're doing. We chose not to start here for this reason. Imagine you're that Nicaraguan in Nicaragua, and you've got to now set up the immutable ledger of who owns what. Looking at the history of all of these 4 different regimes who have done it, and now you've got to, once and for all, resolve all of those title disputes in order to go forward. Good luck with that. All right? So the system has to be so broken, the need has to be so compelling in order to get folks to go and do it. And maybe because they won't get development unless they do, but it requires enormous consensus and agreement amongst many parties to give up their sovereignty in order to join. A system like a registry where someone is going to lose because the government is going to impose some kind of rules because they're registered in a particular way, where the individual's interest in participating is actually negative, the collective is positive, but the individual's is negative, hardly work. Those don't get to critical mass and work. We think they can. We think there's examples in the world. The Republic of Georgia is moving this direction to put their titling on a blockchain. So, and as those examples begin to ripple, they'll go. We just don't think it's the place to start. There's lots of other kinds of transactions that happen much more often that people can learn to trust within this framework that then ripples out and affects these bigger kinds of things. And I think that may be part of the reason why things like registry efforts fail. The other piece is, as Michael said, hey, look, if the system ain't broke and it's inefficient but it's not broke, don't fix it. And so many folks, yeah, it's expensive to do these things, but I can make these transfers here in the States. Places where you can't, that's a bigger issue.
maybe, Christian, you want to quickly respond?
Sure, yeah.
So we are looking for-
Since I'm one of those that is trying to approach that problem, yeah, it is gradual. I mean, it is not an easy problem. I think the approach, as I mentioned earlier, I think the title companies are going to be central to it. They already maintain their own plants. I think working in the private sector, with these organizations to actually help lubricate the exchange of information and the consensus amongst these title companies about the quality of a particular claim. I think that's really where things are going to go. But your question talked to the history, the chain of exchange, and you're right. I don't see anyone recording the last 200 years on the blockchain right now. Maybe that could be an approach to take, but it would be a fake approach because these signatures are long gone. They're actually on other papers. So what we want to do is transition from that older model to the new one. It'll take time. It's a
All right, so let's just take one last question, and I know there's a lot of hands. I'm sorry that you didn't get to all, but there will be a chance to.
Well,
Couple more? Okay, great.
This may be an obvious one, but if this were magically implemented on a Monday, what would keep us from reading on Wednesday about how some Russian thugs have hacked into the system? And even if they couldn't steal value in buildings, wouldn't it disrupt it, and wouldn't it also reduce all the confidence in it and really bring it down? Or
Christian, you want to-
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, can one of you guys explain really how it's distributed and where the data lives?
Okay.
That is less likely, although maybe not impossible.
So, very good question, obviously, and not only that, we've seen examples of that, right? We've seen examples of blockchain systems that went out, big claims, and a week later, a major bug is found, and the confidence in that system is dead. So this has happened in the blockchain space, and the size of the transactions in real estate. You put those two together, and that's why adoption will be gradual, slow, and that's okay. As long as we expect that, we'll get there. If this was implemented on Monday, yeah, I'd be scared too. I mean, you want to have, on one end, we know that the innovation, the theory, and the mathematics that underline blockchain technology, we know that's very sound. Bitcoin's been around now for almost 8 years, and while there's been a lot of news about stolen Bitcoins here and there, these news were always about the implementation of a system. So, like a bank, if I purchase a Bitcoin right now, I can store the Bitcoin. Well, the Bitcoin is not stored anywhere. It's actually living on this blockchain, meaning that there's a lot of computers around the world that have a ledger that says Christian has a Bitcoin. Now, to move that Bitcoin, if I want to transfer the Bitcoin to you, I need a secret key, a password, if you will. And so where I store that password is what makes the difference between a centralized and a decentralized control of that information. If I store the password in my head, there's no Russian hacker that can come steal my Bitcoin. The password, for the Russian hacker to get it, they need to come torture me, right? And I'll spit out the password. If I put the password in a service online for convenience, right, or I put it on my phone because it's easier to transfer the Bitcoin to you if the password's already in the phone, and my phone gets stolen, then I've essentially lost that $100 bill, right, or that Bitcoin. So depending on how you manage the control of the information that provides you access to the blockchain, that's where the risk is. When we've seen failures, in other blockchain companies so far, hacks and stolen Bitcoins, it's always been in situations where it's not so much the data that gets corrupted because the blockchain just reflects where the money is moving. It is access to that secret key, the password, that gives you access to the data. That's what's been.
Just because I want to do this, I just want to put one little coda to it, because I think it's important to realize as well. The risks that Christian's referring to are the loss of my property, right? What we tend to think of in terms of cyber attack is how some Russian hacker, and the poor old Russians, they always get blamed for this, right? They're really good. Koreans, that's right. They find some entry point into a massive repository of data. So we always hear about OPMs getting hacked, and the latest one was Yahoo. That's what's different with the blockchain, right? There's no central institution with a single server that me, the Russian hacker, can go in and just go and steal all of that data. I can get into if I get Christian's key, I can steal his value, but I can't rob the system because I just can't. It's not sitting there as something I can grab hold of and gain the rights to. I'll have to hack every single person's key to gain access to their individual value. It's a very expensive thing to do as a hacker. So one of the security features of the blockchain is actually the incentive system. So we talk about having a sort of a password-controlled network to a single repository, which is the current system, versus all of that responsibility lying with the actual holder and the user.
That's
and
what we call
incentive system.
decentralization.
So decentralization. So I've not got, my incentives are completely different, and in fact, it's much harder to get everything. But sure, if Christian's handing me his password and he's got a $1 million property, I get it, great. I can take his, but I can't get the whole lot. All right, so
One more.